Question 621. Option contracts will be binding on the optioner if a. As mutually agreed on consideration between the parties, pool cleaning services worth $100 are provided by the optionee to the optioner. B. The parties agree to consideration of $5,000 in cash, but it is never delivered to the optioner. C. The object of the contract is the construction of an illegal meth lab. D. None of the above. Correct answer is A. As mutually agreed on consideration between the parties, pool cleaning services worth $100 are provided by the optionee to the optioner. An option contract, to be binding and enforceable, requires valid consideration. Consideration is something of value exchanged between the parties to create a binding agreement. It can be money, goods, services, or even a promise. A. As mutually agreed on consideration between the parties, pool cleaning services worth $100 are provided by the optionee to the optioner. In this scenario, the optionee has provided a service, pool cleaning, that the optioner agreed had a value of $100. This constitutes valid consideration, making the option contract binding on the optioner, to keep the offer open for the specified period. B. The parties agree to consideration of $5,000 in cash, but it is never delivered to the optioner. An agreement to provide consideration is not the same as actually providing it. If the $5,000 is never delivered, there is a lack of actual consideration, and the option contract would likely not be binding on the optioner. A mere promise to pay in the future might be sufficient in some contract scenarios, but for an option contract, the consideration is typically required up front to make the option binding. C. The object of the contract is the construction of an illegal meth lab. A contract with an illegal purpose is void and unenforceable from its inception. The law will not uphold agreements that violate statutes or public policy. Therefore, this option contract would not be binding. Therefore, option A presents a scenario where valid consideration has been provided, making the option contract binding. The presence of mutually agreed upon and provided consideration is essential for an option contract to be binding on the optioner. Question 622. Regarding the relationship between a broker and her salesperson, the broker is an employer and the salesperson is an independent contractor, B. Special agent, C. Employee, D. Either A or C. Correct answer is D. Either A or C. In California, a real estate salesperson can work for a broker as either A. An independent contractor. In this arrangement, the salesperson typically has more control over their work schedule, methods, and expenses. They usually receive a commission-based compensation and are responsible for their own taxes and benefits. The broker provides general oversight but has less direct control over the day-to-day activities of the salesperson. C. An employee. In this arrangement, the broker has more control over the salesperson's work hours, duties, and methods. The salesperson may receive a salary, commission, or a combination of both, and the broker may be responsible for withholding taxes and providing benefits. The specific nature of the relationship is determined by the written agreement between the broker and the salesperson, as well as the actual practices of their working relationship. Factors considered include the level of control the broker has over the salesperson, how the salesperson is compensated, and whether the broker provides benefits. Therefore, depending on the specific agreement and working relationship, a real estate salesperson can be classified as either an independent contractor or an employee of the broker. Question 623. The California real estate law is included in a section of the state's regulations code called the A. California Code of Regulations for Business, B. Business and Professions Code, C. Administrative Law Guide for Professionals, D. Ethical Conduct Code. Correct answer is B. Business and Professions Code. Specifically, the laws governing real estate brokers and salespeople in California are primarily found in Division 4, Part 1, of the California Business and Professions Code, which is administered by the California Department of Real Estate, DRE. The Business and Professions Code sections 10,000 to 10,580 contain the Real Estate Law of California, aka the License Law. Along with the Real Estate Commissioner's regulations, the license law regulates the profession and protects the public from incompetent, immoral, or fraudulent real estate agents. Question 624. The top salesperson at a real estate agency informs his broker that he is leaving the agency and going to work for another broker. His current broker should A. Contact the other broker and threaten to report him to the authorities for stealing his salesperson. B. Return the license certificate to the salesperson. C. Not return the license certificate to the salesperson until he has made at least one more sale as compensation for the departure. D. Return the license certificate to the salesperson and immediately notify the real estate commissioner of his departure. Correct answer is D. Return the license certificate to the salesperson and immediately notify the real estate commissioner of his departure. Salespeople are free to change their employment. Attempting to interfere with this is inappropriate and likely unethical and potentially illegal. There's no legal basis for reporting the other broker for hiring the salesperson. This is illegal and unethical. The broker cannot hold the salesperson's license as leverage for compensation beyond what has already been agreed upon for past services. The salesperson is entitled to have their license returned promptly upon termination of the employment relationship. The salesperson's real estate license is issued to them, but it is held by the employing broker. When a salesperson leaves, the broker is obligated to return the physical license certificate to the salesperson. California real estate law requires the employing broker to promptly notify the Department of Real Estate, DRE, when a salesperson leaves their employment within 5 days. This ensures that the DRE's records are accurate regarding which broker the salesperson is associated with. Question 625. Warhol promises to pay Wyeth $2,000 if Wyeth paints Warhol's house. Midway through the job, the house is destroyed in an earthquake. If Wyeth sues Warhol for payment, Wyeth will likely A. Win, according to the legal doctrine of restitution. B. Win, according to the legal doctrine of reliance. C. Lose, because it is not Warhol's fault that the house was destroyed. D. Lose, because the subject of the painting contract the house has been destroyed. Correct answer is A. Win, according to the legal doctrine of restitution. The destruction of the house by the earthquake makes it impossible for Wyeth to complete the painting job. This generally discharges both parties from their remaining contractual obligations. The doctrine of restitution allows a party who has partially performed under a contract that is subsequently discharged due to impossibility to recover the reasonable value of the services they have already rendered. Wyeth has put in work painting the house before the unforeseen event occurred. Fault is not the primary factor in impossibility of performance. Even if neither party is at fault for the event that makes performance impossible, the contract is generally discharged. However, Wyeth is still entitled to compensation for the work already done. While the destruction of the house does discharge the contract, it doesn't necessarily mean Wyeth loses the right to any payment for the work completed. The doctrine of restitution addresses this situation by allowing recovery for partial performance. Therefore, under the legal doctrine of restitution, Wyeth can likely recover the reasonable value of the painting services he provided before the earthquake destroyed the house. Question 626. When can a broker, acting as the seller's agent, refuse to submit an offer to the seller from a potential buyer? A. If the broker's business associate has submitted an offer. B. If the owner is considering another offer. C. If the owner has provided the broker with specific instructions not to accept any further offers. D. Never, all offers must be presented. Correct answer is C. If the owner has provided the broker with specific instructions not to accept any further offers. The broker still has a duty to present all offers received to the seller, even if one comes from a business associate. The seller has the right to consider all offers. Failing to present an offer could be a breach of the broker's fiduciary duty and raise issues of self-dealing if the broker is prioritizing their associate's offer over others. If the owner is considering another offer, the broker must still present all new offers received, even if the seller is already considering another one. The seller has the right to compare all available offers before making a final decision. Withholding an offer could prevent the seller from receiving a better price or terms. As the seller's agent, the broker has a fiduciary duty to act in the best interests of the seller and follow their lawful instructions. If the seller explicitly instructs the broker not to present any further offers, perhaps because they have already accepted an offer or are very close to doing so, the broker is obligated to follow those instructions. While the general rule is that a listing agent must present all offers to the seller, this is subject to the seller's lawful instructions. If the seller explicitly directs the broker not to present further offers, the broker must comply. However, the broker should advise the seller on the potential implications of such instructions. Question 627. A major difference between real property and personal property is: A. Real property depreciates in value, personal property does not. B. Real property can be leased, personal property cannot. C. Real property is immovable, personal property can be moved. D. Real property can be paid for on an installment plan, personal property cannot. Correct answer is C. Real property is immovable, personal property can be moved. Real property, realty, includes land and anything permanently attached to it, such as buildings, trees, and fixtures. Its defining characteristic is its immovability. Personal property, personality, encompasses all other property that is not real property. It is characterized by its movability. Examples include furniture, vehicles, clothing, stocks, and intellectual property. Both real and personal property can depreciate or appreciate in value depending on various factors like market conditions, age, condition, and demand. While it's more common to lease real property, personal property can also be leased. Examples include car leases, equipment rentals, and furniture rentals. Both real and personal property can be purchased using installment plans or financing. Mortgages for real estate and financing for cars or appliances are common examples. Therefore, the fundamental distinction lies in the physical characteristic of immovability for real property and movability for personal property. Question 628. When two parties in a contract compose a new contract as a replacement, it is called an A. Reliction. B. Novation. C. Avulsion. D. Accession. Correct answer is B. Novation. Reliction, avulsion, and accession are all legal terms, describe property, but not refer to a contract. Reliction is the increase in land caused by the gradual recession or shrinkage of a body of water, such as a lake or sea, which gives the owner of the property more dry land. Avulsion occurs due to a sudden natural event, such as a powerful river, that erodes and abruptly detaches a portion of land from a coastal or riverfront property. The detached land may belong to the owner of the avulsed property if it moves to an adjacent location. However, if the avulsed land moves to a more distant location, its ownership may need to be determined according to law. Accession is when personal property permanently attaches to another item, raising its value. Novation is a legal term that refers to the creation of a new contract that extinguishes, overrides, a previous contract between the same parties. Both parties involved agree to replace the original contract with the new one, effectively terminating the old obligations and replacing them with the new terms. Novation can either be the substitution of a new party into an existing contract, or the substitution of a new obligation for an existing one. Question 629. When an agent is showing several properties to a potential client, she should do all of the following, except A. Choose homes that meet the client's needs. B. Provide scorecards for the client to rate the properties. C. Start the tour in the most impressive room in the house. D. Use technical jargon throughout the tour. Correct answer is D. Use technical jargon throughout the tour. Choose homes that meet the client's needs is a fundamental aspect of a real estate agent's service. By understanding the client's criteria, location, size, features, budget, the agent can show relevant properties, saving the client time and effort. Scorecards is a helpful tool for clients to organize their thoughts and compare different properties based on specific criteria. It aids in their decision-making process. Start the tour in the most impressive room in the house can create a positive first impression and highlight a key selling point of the property early in the showing. It can build excitement and interest. Using excessive technical real estate or construction terms can confuse and overwhelm the client. The agent's role is to explain features and benefits in a clear and understandable way. While some specific terms might be necessary, relying heavily on jargon will likely hinder communication and make the client feel less informed and more intimidated. Therefore, the agent should focus on clear communication and understanding the client's perspective, rather than using confusing technical language. Question 630. Ruby owns a tire store. In consideration for an option to buy a parcel of land from Betsy, Ruby offered Betsy 4 free tires. Assuming that the other elements of a valid option are present, the option is A. Invalid, tires cannot serve as consideration. B. Valid, if the value of the tires exceeds $400. C. Valid, if Betsy accepts the tires as consideration. D. Valid, if Betsy owns a car. Correct answer is C. Valid, if Betsy accepts the tires as consideration. In contract law, consideration is something of value exchanged between parties to form a binding agreement. This can be money, goods, services, or even a promise. The law generally doesn't dictate the adequacy of the consideration, whether it's a fair market value. As long as the optionee accepts the consideration as having some value, then the offer is supported by consideration and legal. The specific monetary value of the consideration isn't the determining factor for validity, as long as both parties agree to it. Even if the tires were worth less than $400, if Betsy accepted them as the price for granting Ruby the option, it would likely be valid. Whether Betsy owns a car is irrelevant to the validity of the consideration. The key is whether she agreed to accept the tires as the price for the option. She might value them for resale or any other reason. Therefore, the validity of the option contract hinges on Betsy's acceptance of the tires as the consideration for granting Ruby the option.